Hey everybody, Matt,
Mike,
IronTrap podcast, doing the podcast thing. You
this
guys
is
didn't know?
if you haven't noticed, this is one of those fun visual ones.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast or any of the podcast apps, head to YouTube. The video ones I add all kinds of B-roll from past trips or photos or all kinds of visual aids on top of the video.
And this one's probably going to be visually one of the coolest.
Yeah.
One of the coolest ones we've done.
All the trip ones that we talk about, there's always cool video
Yeah.
aid or B-roll that we put on top. I go back and take the old video and chop it up and put clips over top to make it more visually appealing rather than looking at us two idiots.
Yeah. Try and do that as little as possible.
Yes.
So, new news, different stuff like that going on. We have the shirt. We've talked about it a bunch. We're about to launch the pre-order for the new T-shirts, the shop shirt or speed shop type logo, whatever you want to call it.
Our parts robot.
Parts robot. It's pretty sweet. I'm actually kind of stoked on it. It has a little pocket. I think it's gonna be pretty neat.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do
that should be live now. I have everything basically set up. We're just waiting on some mock-up photos to use for the website. It'll be offered in pocket and non-pocket.
Yep.
Matt and I are still working through colors. We're filming this a couple days ahead of time, but we're just working through some colors options of what we're going to be.
definitely white.
Definitely white. To be white with blue printing on it.
Ford blue.
Trying to work on black or navy blue. So
yeah, some sort of we're either going to pick a shade of blue,
yep,
medium or navy, or we might just go with black. But I feel like I don't know. We may end up just printing some blacks anyways, just for us because like shop shirts. But a blue, I think this logo goes better with a blue.
Yeah, and just we've done so many black shirts. Every shirt we do is in black.
That's mainly because I like.
Yeah, I enjoy black too, but I mean navy blue is also kind of black removed under the right colors. So
yeah, you're right.
Lighting, so it's
still dark enough that it'll hide pizza sauce stains or something,
or grinding dust and all that stuff.
Whatever. So.
But head to the website; it should be live as of Sunday. I'm going to work. If I have to work through the weekend to figure it out, we'll get it done.
And we're ending the pre-order.
It'll be pre-order end the first week of April. We just have to set a date somewhere. The first week of April it'll end. All those details will be on the website when it is ending. 2 weeks to print the shirts, and then they will ship, and then we will have a limited supply at Carlisle as well to sell.
And like always, we will decide if we're going to reprint again if we get a lot of interest in them, or we sell a lot of them, or the pre-order does well. Otherwise, like a lot of the shirts, we may do small batches just for ourselves.
Yep.
Like, because we don't make a lot of money on shirts. Really, in the end of the day, it's we get some shirts that we can wear and hand out to friends. It's marketing if we talk about the business side of things. But so for us to print, we used to print so many T-shirts, and then we had all this back stock, and I'm like, wait a second, we're not Hot Topic or something, or carrying all these like 18 different T-shirts.
Also, the remaining Ride With Us shirts will be live as well. Cool. I've been waiting for everything. International shipments take some time, so we've been just waiting until all that's wrapped up in case someone ordered the wrong size or they got lost. So there's like 2 or 3 of each size. There's not a lot of extra. So Sunday I will make it go live Sunday at 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening to this and you want one, head there, pause this, go right there, buy that Ride With Us shirt. So pre-orders should ship the 3rd week of April, the week before Carlisle, basically.
Yep. And then we'll have at Carlisle.
Yeah, we'll have a handful. I don't know what we'll have pocket versus non-pocket at Carlisle. Matt and I have to discuss what we're going to print extras of.
Yeah, we have no idea.
As you can tell, we are not very, we have not thought this out super far in advance.
Let's make a decision. Pick a number out of the thin air. But
depending how things order, we might have both there.
Yeah, we don't know. So otherwise, that's pretty much the big.
50th in 2 weeks, we're doing our 50th podcast. So if you have any questions, comment down below, send us an email. We've mentioned it a few times, but we got a bunch.
It's a pretty good list. We got on the last.
I did it in the week in the life
of. We actually got a bunch. In the week in the life of. Some of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
think hard. Don't ask a generic question because we've covered the very generic questions multiple times.
What's the bump on Moon's tail?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the big update.
Oh yeah.
Moon's getting his. He's gonna be not present in the videos very much
Yeah.
for a few weeks. Moon's getting all his bumps removed. We should just talk about it. So Moon has been a bumpy dog since he was a puppy. As he's gotten older,
He's what, 9 now?
He's 9 now. They've gotten bigger. Since he was a puppy, he had one small one that's on his back. And every year or 6 months when he goes into the vet, they get checked up and shots and whatever. They drain them. And the vet checks them and whatever. And basically, Moon is a Great Dane and a Hound mix. The Hound side of him, they tend to get cysts, beagles, and bloodhounds, all that stuff. And that's what it is. So over the years, I've just gotten them drained. They've been okay. This winter, I had his tail one drained, and within 2 weeks or so, it came back as big as it was, like filled back up. So we're opting to get them removed. I can't wait a lot longer because he's getting older, and once they get so old, giving them anesthesia is a problem.
Yeah.
So I feel like we get these questions all the time. I don't know why anyone would think that I don't take care of my dog. My dog eats as well as I do, does everything I do.
Matt's a better dog owner than 99%. I've known Matt a very long time, and his animals are like his children. So
Yes.
as well as, well, some people don't take very good care of their kids, but if you take extreme care of your kids, Matt does the same with his pets.
Yeah, Moon gets A1
Yeah.
care, and I know the vets at the veterinarian's office. I know pretty well. One of them is old car fanatic and runs in the same group of friends. So like, they aren't like BSing me. Like when they talk to me, they generally always are like, and even now they're like, there's nothing alarming with them. It's just that now if it's bothering him is what they've always said. So Moon's going to have a coon for a while. One of them is on his tail. Moon, if you haven't met Moon or maybe you've noticed, Moon's tail since he's a puppy does not stop moving. I've never had a dog that wags its tail every waking second. So a wound on his tail is going to be difficult to heal. So we're going to have to keep him inside, calm, all that kind of stuff, which is very hard with him.
Yeah, he's going to be, and he's also a very close proximity dog. He's up your butt 90% of the time. Yep. So Moon with a cone is not going to be very fun.
It's constantly running into you with a cone. He's a pain in the butt.
You're going to go in the house. Everyone's knees are going to be bruised from him running the cone into the back of your leg.
Yeah. So anyways, that's a random Moon update. Everybody loves Moon. So.
That is probably in the last 8 months. There is a comment on every video that Moon is on. What's up with the bump on his tail? We know it's there. It's getting taken care of.
Yeah. Well, I've been taking care of it. It's just, now that it fills up in 2 weeks or something, the time that it's not filled up is the thing. So he's that's what I kept responding. He's an old bumpy dog. Like he's just old. He's getting older. He gets more bumps just like old people.
Yeah. Well, 9 times 7 is what? He's in his 60s in dog years or something like that. Most 60-year-old dudes have bumps.
Yeah, start getting some bumps and lumps and nose hair and graying a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, but anyways, Moon will be down for a little bit. So, anyways,
that's our whole podcast topic for today. We're done. See you guys.
We could just talk about Moon, and I think everybody will enjoy that. We'll do a Moon.
We should do a Moon themed podcast, and he has to sit right here between us the entire time.
Good luck with that. Well, we have some great stories, and he's been around. I mean, before we even had the channel. Yeah. But he's been around since he was a young dog when I picked up the Sweetheart Roadster, and I have a photo of him.
It's my favorite photo of him sitting next to you.
Yeah, and he's literally been with me. I mean, when he was a little pup, I might even have a photo somewhere. I went to an auction like 2 days after I got him, and I had a photo of him sitting on the passenger seat of my F-250, and I left the truck running with the heat on because it was in the winter. And I went into an auction to bid on some stuff and came out and he was just curled up asleep in the truck. Didn't care. He's been so cool and, forever. So it's...
Except if you come on his property. He is not cool if you come on his property. He's going to bark at you.
He's going to bark and run and act a fool. But anyway, so today's topic is...
Probably one of our largest quantity of parts, like just sheer volume of stuff ever. And that was the... NOS sheet metal that we bought in West Virginia.
A portion of it was NOS sheet metal. It was a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of everything, but probably 75% of it was NOS sheet metal.
Yep. So if you guys haven't, we say it in the beginning, we always put the link to the video that we're talking about below. So if you want to watch the whole video
there's
2
videos of us going there, 2 trips, and there's also 2 unloading videos as well.
So we... Yeah, this one was a random left field email.
This actually he views our channel, is where
Yeah.
it came from.
Yeah, it was a viewer. Not into early Fords,
Nope.
but it's a guy that was aware of our channel, watched. I don't know how avidly he watched
Yeah.
the channel, but he watched our channel, was aware of us, and he got involved in this estate because he was super into the early Jeeps.
The Bantam Jeeps.
Yeah, and super nerdy. World War II era and older
Yep.
type Jeeps he was really, really into. And this estate apparently had one that was pretty rare that the family owned. And he was trying to help facilitate them being able to afford to restore it. And
Do you remember how he got involved with it? How he found this estate?
he was tracking down the VIN.
So he went down. There's a registry with everyone that owns one, and he went down. He was trying to buy one. He was trying to find one to buy for himself. He went down the registry and just called every person and said, "Are you looking to sell yours? Are you looking to sell yours?" And when they got to this family, I guess the daughter had her dad's cell phone, and she answered, said, "Unfortunately, my father passed away, but we want to get it restored." So he was going to help facilitate getting the car.
I think he was going to restore it maybe
Yeah,
for them.
help
but,
them, yeah.
But he started talking what it cost, and it's, it was I think it was kind of, maybe not rough, but it needed
Yeah.
everything type deal. And so they were kind of talking to him about, we need to come up with the money, and my dad has this other property that's got all kinds of car parts, and I think they were also trying to look. Oh yeah, because I think they moved the Jeep to his.
The Jeep was in the building with all the NOS sheet metal.
Yeah, so they moved it to this
Yeah.
guy's. I forget. I apologize. I forget your name. It moved to his shop.
Yep.
And I think he was in
Richmond.
Yeah. Okay. And he was in this building, and they were looking for the parts that were missing for the truck. So he kind of got a feel for what was in there. And actually what he saw that he made him think of us was there was a Model A two-door sedan that was like up on a loft. And he saw a bunch of Model A stuff like right inside the door,
Yeah.
wire wheels. And he initially sent us an email or called just saying, hey, there's old Ford stuff here. Maybe you're interested in some of it. And I, of course, did the phone call. I don't think there was no photos at that point. It was just him telling us about it.
Yeah.
Because it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
So I talked to him on the phone. He starts telling me about the place, and he's like, a lot of these estates, when I do the initial phone call, if they start leading into it with an interesting story, and it's not just like a checklist of the things they have at a storage unit,
Yeah.
it kind of lures us in. So he started off with, this property is on the top of a mountain in West Virginia in the middle of nowhere, and it's just a giant building in the middle of the woods, and so to speak. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other buildings or properties around it, but it was but there's no house. It's just a garage, and there's bamboo everywhere, and we had to cut through the bamboo to make a trail to the building because you couldn't get in. I'm like, what? Bamboo in West Virginia? He's like, yeah, the guy planted bamboo on the property to be like a privacy. And then as he got older and couldn't take care of it, the bamboo took over the driveway. And he's like, we literally had to go with like axes and chainsaws and cut the bamboo down.
Took him 8 hours to cut it in a driveway.
Yes, just to go back and get to it. And he said, we've been there a couple times. We now sort of have a driveway, but like it's still kind of hard to get to. And he's telling me how there's like other old vehicles like scattered in the bamboo. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't care what you're selling. I'm in. I want to shoot
Yeah.
a video. I want to go see this place. It's cool.
Yeah, sometimes the stuff isn't as interesting as the view of we think of it as from a film aspect.
Yeah.
It looks good on camera, and that's
And for personal, that's half the reason I've got into doing this stuff since I was a kid. It's the like Indiana Jones effect, and it's like
that was about as Indiana Jones as it gets.
That was up there. So like when you start telling me about that, I'm like, oh man, tell me more. So he told us about that, and then he mentioned, well, the building's also full of hundreds of NOS,
which is an underestimation, big time.
Hundreds of NOS sheet metal. I'm like, well, what kind? He goes, what's GM? I don't think you guys would like it. A lot of it's 70s, 80s, 60s GM. And she's like, and he said, apparently the story is her father went to an auction somewhere and he bought all the stuff and he brought it here and he inventoried it. A lot of it has a numbering system on it, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, we might be interested if it's the right price. And as with a lot of these estates, the family member didn't always leave the best situation for the and this is some of this we like to talk about, because if you're older or
you have an older family member
and they don't have their shit together, you should probably just ask some questions. So this was another one. There was a house somewhere that we ended up going to later that was in very poor condition. This property was all grown in. There was, taxes that needed to be paid and all the kind of stuff. And the daughter was kind of like, they needed to liquidate this stuff quickly to help fund keeping everything afloat, And she didn't live real close either.
No, they lived in Tennessee. They were like 8 hours away.
Yeah, so this guy was kind of the go-between because she was very cautious. Her father was very cautious.
Insanely cautious.
She was cautious, so it took a while because he had to wait till they could get up there. He was coming from Richmond, and it was quite a little bit of drive for him. And
part of it transpired over the winter, too.
Yeah.
Because we didn't go to, like, March it was before Carlisle. So it was, like, end of March we went. Mm-hmm. So another one of these, you get a contact in the fall, and then by the time everything drags on through winter, it takes a while.
Yeah, so eventually he got there, and the other little wrinkle is, of course, there's like no cell phone service back where he was. Like nothing, on top of a mountain, blah, blah, blah. Same old story. So he went there to get photos and stuff, but he couldn't text me there so I could be like, oh, could you get a better photo of this? So whatever he gave me is what we got.
Yeah.
So he starts sending photos, and a lot of times with these estates, I've gotten better now when I'm telling somebody and they're going to take photos, I go, take broad overall photos of the wall, of the building. I don't need close-ups of the steering box that's on the ground or the part number. So this guy kind of did a lot of that, where he was taking like a photo of one fender or three fenders. I'm like, no, I'm trying to get an idea of how vast, what's the quantity, what are we dealing with? And I could zoom in with a cell phone. So I didn't do that back then. I do it now. I'm very specific about saying that. And so the photos he got weren't really the best. It told a story, but it didn't really tell us how much.
Yeah, because when we walked in that first time, we're like, we need 2 more box trucks.
Like, oh my God. Yeah. So basically we started negotiating, and I kind of was like, she was using him as a barrier so that she didn't have to deal with us. And if he and I could come to agreement roughly on price, then she would allow us to go there. And the passing
of our father wasn't super recent, but it was still pretty fresh.
Yeah,
so
she was emotional.
Yeah.
So I kind of said to him, what do you think the stuff's worth? What's the, what we don't really know. Cause he's saying, she says there's 300, I think that was the numbers, 300 or 400 body panels. I said, okay, great. There's a numbering system. Do you have the key so I could see what there is? And then we can help evaluate it so that I don't agree to overspend, and I don't undervalue it, and then you guys feel like you're ripped off. And they're like, yeah, there is a key. We don't know where it's at. Nobody can find it. She was trying to get that information out of him, I think, before he passed, and she couldn't, or whatever the deal was. They don't have it. So they don't know what all these body panels are. And sure, we could identify some of them, but we didn't know. So and they couldn't tell me over the phone. So I'm like, okay, well, what if I get there and there's 400 body panels that are 4-door 50s car that's worth nothing, rear doors,
or 80 Chevette.
Yeah, and there was a little bit.
There was some Chevette stuff that we did have to auction.
Yes, oddly enough. So I wasn't willing to overspend. It was 5 hours from here. It was all the way to Pittsburgh, basically below Wheeling.
Yeah, it's right by the what's the gorge there? Oh, shit, I can't think of it. There's a famous gorge. Remember that bridge you drive over?
Yeah.
It's huge. There's a famous gorge in West Virginia. I can't remember it, but it was like right down the street from there.
Yeah. So, anyways, long story short, we started negotiating, and he basically, and we've, I think, talked about this in these videos about states, because people seem to be really interested in how we negotiate, what we pay. And
how do you evaluate them?
And unfortunately, like, I can't discuss most times with estates what we pay, because the estate also doesn't want that information going out.
Yeah.
It's not that we're trying to be secretive all the time. Sometimes the estate, they don't want people to know for whatever reason. I don't know. We talked about in the Texas one, there was some weird family stuff going on. So like, out of respect, we don't always talk about that. So it's not us being secretive or ripping somebody off. It's the same reason you don't tell somebody what you make a year in a job, or you don't tell somebody what you sold your car for. It's just private information.
How much did you buy your house for?
Yeah, it's just like that's not well, at least do the house so you can
look it up.
Use the internet. So we basically kind of, in this instance, there was a dollar amount that I don't know if it was for taxes or was some purpose. There was a dollar amount that they needed for getting something done. Sometimes it's like the building that all the stuff's in needs a roof. It's $20,000 for the roof. Give me 20 grand for the car and whatever the stuff, whatever that number is. So this was an instance where we dialed it in on this number that they needed to accomplish upgrades or do something. I don't pay back taxes.
I think it was back taxes, and some of it was going to go towards the building to get the house that he was living in repaired so they could rent it.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. So he said that number, and this was one of those instances where the number he said, I said, you know what? If every body panel's worth $10 a piece, times that, the Model A two-door body's worth this, and he's telling me all these things. I'm like, you know what? There's got to be enough quantity there that even if it's hard, we could sell enough items to break even and make some profit. Now, on the flip side, it's like if these panels were all rear doors for a four-door, we might have a hard time breaking even. But I'm like, we were hopeful that there was some gems in there because he bought the stuff a while ago, and there's some sort of rare piece in there that like is a $2,000 item. So,
and a lot of times what we do, we break it down in very simple math. Say it's $30,000. You say, is there, what is it, $30,000? Are there 300 items in there that are worth $100?
Yeah, and
it's like we do this all the time. We're like hemming and hawing about price, and then we just make a simple. How many $100 items do we need to sell to make our money back? And you think about it that way, you're like, oh, that's super easy.
And I think they told us the building was 100 foot deep by like 40 or 60.
It's 100 by 40, yeah.
Yeah, and we're like, okay, and he's telling me the building's full. You can't see the floor. There's Model A stuff. There's a body, and it's like a Model A body. And I'm like, you know what? Like, if every body panel's worth $10 or $50, whatever we averaged it out at, it's like, well, we'll be broken even just with doing that. Sure, in that instance, it's going to be very difficult, a lot labor intensive to make our money back, but it's kind of a no-brainer because we always know that there's going to be surprises.
And there was we'll get into the end. At the end, we'll talk about some of the surprises that we found, but there was luckily some stuff.
So the first trip, we gathered up 5 of us.
I'm trying to remember.
Jason Lacombe. Or no, was Jason on the first or second trip? He was on that trip because he went on the second half. Our buddy Jason, that goes on a lot of the trips with us.
Jason Moss?
Steve was with us the first time.
Yep.
That was his first adventure.
Out-of-town adventure, yeah. Was Jason Moss with us too, or no?
Was Kenny with us?
No, Kenny was the second trip.
Yeah.
It might have just been the 4 of us.
Oh, okay. Then it was the 4 of us.
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was 4 of us. And, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, you and Steve. So the way it worked out, you and Steve drove out with the trailer ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Or no. Do we even have a trailer? No, you just took your pickup truck. Drove out ahead of time. And then me and I had to wait for Jason to come in. Jason lives North Jersey.
Yep.
So he drove to my house after work. Then him and I drove like through the night.
Yep.
All the way, and we stayed at the worst hotel ever.
I picked it. I didn't look at the reviews, and I just picked
it. The hotel itself wasn't terrible. Smelled like smoke, but the lady at the front counter
was a pretty
the scariest old lady Jason and I got in at like 1 a.m, and she had like the scariest wig you've ever seen.
Let's put it this way. She was like from an old horror movie.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we joked that she probably was hot and started working there. She was 22, and she was probably very good looking, and she worked the graveyard shift
all these years.
And maybe she was only 37, but it was that rough on her.
And you're like talking to her through like bulletproof glass through like a window. It was so.
And there was like a physical key, I think, at that one. It was just a great pick.
We've stayed at some majority of the hotels we stay in are fairly decent, but that one it was like, I can't. I'm glad it's only one night and we're getting out of here.
So we got to the place, and the daughter was fairly eccentric.
Well, let's talk about getting the box truck first.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Matt, so we just booked it at the closest like big city because we found at the big cities there's more trucks. It's easier to rent. We actually rented south of where we actually drove past the estate to get the box truck and then came back. And they had mentioned that coming from one direction, you come up this crazy mountain switchback pass to come in from the other direction. Well, Matt just put it in his GPS and we took a 26-foot box truck. I think we might have also had the trailer. I'm trying to remember if I drugged the trailer up that road too.
No.
But I can't remember.
Yes, I think we did. No, we didn't, because I remember just putting the stuff in the back of my pickup at the second stop.
Oh, it's true. So we had my pickup, your pickup, and the box truck.
Yes.
And when you say mountain switchback, there was just drop-offs, just cliff on the other side of the road.
Yeah, and there was like construction at one point where it was down the one lane, and it was barely could fit the box truck through, but it was crazy switchbacks, super steep. And luckily the truck was empty, because if we would have hit it on the way back, we might not have made it up the hill.
Dude, I remember just following behind you going, he is losing his goddamn mind right now.
I was just yelling at the GPS, why would you take me this way? Why?
There isn't a box truck option, like a large vehicle.
So mad. So that was like nerve-wracking.
Yep.
And then we finally got there, but then the whole other part was the gal was a bit eccentric.
Yep.
And she insisted that we meet her at some, because it's like near the lodge or the.
There's like a hotel on the top of the mountain that we met him at.
So we had to meet her in the parking lot, and just she had to feel out her aura or something.
That's exactly what she said.
Yes. So if that gives you any kind of insight into how she was eccentric. So we went there, and we were polite and whatever. But at this point, it's like we only have so much daylight. We were planning like 2 days.
Yeah.
And we only had so much daylight.
Well, we were only planning a day because you had to go to.
Oh yeah.
On the second part, you went somewhere else.
No, we had kind of thought about doing a second day. I think I had it built into the schedule.
Oh, possibly, yeah.
So she's talking to us and telling us stories and all this stuff, and I'm like, my God, like, not to be rude, but like, let's get moving. So finally, she's like, okay, like, yeah, we can go over there. So we get there, we park on the side of the road. And you can't see anything. It's literally like they just had a chain or a wooden gate or whatever.
It was a piece of chain across the driveway.
And it was like literally like we were in another world, and it was just bamboo totally covering you, overhead, whatever.
And the driveway isn't straight back, it kind of hooks.
Yeah.
So as you look back, you can't even really see the building. You just see like front ends of cars sticking through the bamboo and just stuff. And
so the first thing we get there, we quickly realize we can't get the box truck back there. No way. It's not only is it too low with the the bamboo and everything overhead, it was also like sketchy, and it was the wind, and it was too narrow.
Yep.
So we were like, okay, well, I guess we're ferrying everything with the pickup trucks. It's like,
luckily we had multiple pickup trucks there to ferry it.
I made it a little easier. So we went back and opened the building. We walk in and just like, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, just walked in. You're like, oh, I've never seen. It was very similar to walking into a butcher shop.
Yeah.
With just body panels, just everywhere you turn, they were just interlaced and rows after rows. But all the walls are covered. It was the craziest thing ever.
You could barely walk into the building. And then the other problem was we initially had spoke to them about, like a lot of these states, we kind of know what we need at a bare minimum to work.
Yeah.
And we're like, there was a 50s Olds that was mentioned was in the way to get to the Model A two-door body, which was on like stilts or on a mezzanine type thing. And I said, I really need you to drag that out into the open or get it running so that we can back up to it and get it. We get there. Nope. Didn't touch it. Oh, it hasn't started in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Oh, tires are flat. Wheels are stuck. Great. So we were like, okay, how do we get, because the car was like almost over the trunk of the.
And we had to get 1,000, and their estimation was incorrect. There was probably because there was smaller panels, there was probably close to 800 pieces of sheet metal in that building.
I think when they told me 300, they were just counting like
The big things.
like I think they just counted on the wall, and there was 300 big pieces of sheet metal on the wall, but they didn't realize there was all these drums that were filled with like slam panels and like.
And then behind the one wall, behind like the big quarter panels, there was a whole 2 rows of little pieces.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So all 800 of those had to also come by the Oldsmobile. We had to move it all past that Olds. There's only one little aisleway to get past everything.
Yeah, so, and it was, obviously grown up and there's stuff all around it. So I remember we got in there, and that was one of the ones where usually we've gotten good at this, where we make a game plan way ahead of time when we're flying there or we're driving there. Mike and I usually talk and like, this is how we're going to hopefully attack this. So we didn't have a plan. We got there and opened the door because there was so little photos, and we're like, whoa, this is way more difficult, way more than we expected. How the heck do we even tackle? So we went in, and it was just like Steve's first time. And to be completely honest, Steve's not very good at this. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. Steve hyper focuses. And what Mike and I are good at, like, let's get the job done. We try not to, oh man, this is really cool. Let me flip this.
Unless it's like, really, holy fuck, like, we got to look at this.
And even anymore when we do that, I try and
show it to you, and then we keep going.
I try and turn my brain. I go, oh, that is so cool, and I just know that we'll look at it. We'll look at it at home. And Steve was like overwhelmed.
And Jason Lacombe's also like that too, just because we're very desensitized to, like, much like a doctor's desensitized to blood and gore.
Yeah,
we're desensitized to buildings filled with cool car parts because it's just like another Tuesday for us in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, so we've learned to not hyper focus and focus on getting the job done. I kind of just take the role as project coordinator and try and keep everybody moving while I'm also working. So like Steve was having trouble, and he's just like, well, what about this? Oh, what do you think this is? And he's like, I'm like, Steve, you need to go to the truck, go smoke a cigar, and load the truck.
Yeah, which we also found Steve
not great at.
He's not bad, but
not great at.
Matt and I have obviously packed a lot of box trucks, so I'm very good at playing Lego, Tetris.
Tetris, yeah. So we were trying to figure out how to move everybody around and what to do and how to attack it.
How to ferry 2 trucks at once, where you're not just like sitting and waiting for the truck to be filled. How can we efficiently fill 2 box trucks and keep it as a constant back and forth without.
So what did we start attacking the walls? I think is what we.
Yeah, because we started attacking the walls, but the big thing is we had to get the body out of the way because it was in the way.
Oh, and he like had built.
It was up on stilts,
and it was sitting up on this platform, but it was in the way to get some of the other stuff out.
Yeah, it was difficult to work around.
Yeah,
because it wasn't also very high. Like I couldn't walk under it. Oh, I had to like duck to get under it.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm pretty sure that's actually the first thing we did, because we had 3 pickup trucks. So the Model A went right in my bed, and I parked it out on the road out of the way, and then we used your truck and the gentleman that connected us.
Yeah.
His truck is a ferry in and out. So I'm pretty sure the very first thing we did is clear enough space that we could physically get the Model A cut down, and which was a nightmare, cut down and carry it out.
Yeah, it was on a stilt, and everything was put together with nails, not screws.
Yeah.
So I think, and it was too heavy for us to it was too high and too heavy to lift it up off because of that Olds being there.
And it's at like head. If you've never moved a Model A body,
they're heavy.
Especially a 2-door sedan. Like Matt and I, we could carry a Roadster body. It's
heavy,
tough.
Though.
It's tough. We could do it. But you add the roof and doors, and it adds up quick.
And I think it was screwed down on the.
It was on like a pharaoh, like you were carrying a king.
Yeah. So I guess what did we end up doing? Just cutting the legs one at a time.
Yeah, we took 6-inch chunks out of each leg around and just slowly lowered it down. And I also remembered we brought a Sawzall, but I didn't bring a wood blade. I brought, you thinking of cars and parts, we packed metal blades. So using a metal blade, if you've ever done it, it takes forever to cut through a 2x4. Just like, just slowly cutting 6 inches at a time all the way around till we got it low enough that we could easily.
And it was sketchy because obviously, like, they cared about the Olds.
Yeah.
It's like we had to carry it up, over, and around, and then there's all kinds of stuff. So we had to, like, tiptoe and hold it. And it was literally, I remember when we were taking it by the Olds, it was like, I was putting my hand between the body and the olds because I figured I'd crush my hand before smashing the window out or something. And it was like dragging my hand down the side of the car.
I'm very glad we brought 4 people for that trip, because it would have been like you and I. There's no way you and I would have been able to get it.
Never.
We'd have to erect a shelf over the olds and try and slide it out.
Yeah, it would have been a nightmare. So we got that out. We started moving body pounds. We cut that thing all apart.
Yeah.
And then we started moving body pounds. And we just basically were trying to make room. Well, no, what we were doing at first, and this was one of our mistakes, we kind of thought, because Steve's a GM guy.
Well, also, we were looking at it, we're only going to be here for one trip. Yeah. We were also looking at it, we're not going to make a return trip.
It wasn't worth coming back, so we were going to pull whatever we could pull. And they knew we weren't doing a broom swept service. We were just taking whatever and giving them a set dollar amount. But we were kind of like, okay, Steve, like, you really know Chevys and GMs and 60s to 80s stuff.
Yeah.
What's good here? So he was kind of identifying like, oh, that's Nova, that's Chevelle, that's whatever. But he was, and this is where that term we talked about in the last video, everything sells.
Yep.
We were like, nah, Steve's like, this is all like 80s, like the radiator supports, and they're not worth shit, blah, blah, blah. And he's telling us, oh, that's 4-door, it's not worth anything.
Yeah, 4-door and wagon stuff. He's like, 4-door and wagon stuff's not worth anything.
Mm-hmm. So Steve was thinking from his niche or corner of the hobby.
And also like 15, 20 years ago, that was the case. 4-door and wagon stuff was not hot, not worth a ton.
So we were just kind of grabbing the stuff we could identify, he could identify. We were plucking different things off. We left a lot of things on the shelf. And then after that, it was like, we need to just start filling the truck. So it was filling up pretty quick.
Oh yeah, we filled that 26-footer because the way the panels were, there's a wall of just real small stuff. So we'd fill the truck with a bunch of big panels and then take loads of small panels. And that trip, I spent a lot of time packing the truck, trying to fill in voids, because you get a big quarter panel. None of them are all shaped the same size.
Yep.
So they don't stack well. So you got all these voids. So it's like one truckload of big panels, one truckload of small panels. And you kind of just shove as much stuff behind everything as possible.
Yeah, we were like, it was a nightmare to unload because we were just every little open crevice. We were like,
and if you touch one thing, there was 30 things coming at you at once. So,
and then we were just basically moving the stuff that we could identify.
Yeah.
And I remember we were 60% of the way through the day or 70% where we knew in like an hour or two it was going to start to kind of get dark. I was like, you know what? Maybe we should stay a second day. Or maybe it was even earlier than that. I was like, you know what? Let's stay a second day. Mike had to get going because he had a family thing. But I was like, the 3 of us can continue to load the box. Oh, no. I was like, we'll go get another box truck. I think I even looked it up.
Yeah.
And we might have even reserved it. We were going to go get another box truck.
I think we did reserve a U-Haul.
Yeah. And we were going to go get another box truck. And then as the day went on, then the family members were like, well, like the weather up here is totally different than down there. And it was like March, right?
Yeah, it's actually coming up. So we went, another podcast we'll do is the Missouri. That was like 3 days ago.
Oh, yeah.
And then in a couple weeks, it'll come up on my Facebook that we went to this place. So it was like mid to late March.
So they were like, the weather's going to change, and they're calling for some snow. And if we get like an inch down at the, in the valley below the mountain might get like 10 inches. We don't know. It's unpredictable.
And it actually did start to snow when we left.
Yeah, and they were like, sometimes it's you're not able to get up the mountain when even if it's like 6 inches and they decide not to clear it.
Yeah.
You might not be able to get up the mountain without a.
And there's nowhere to stay within 20 minutes. You got to drive a good ways to a hotel.
Yeah, so I kind of got scared then and pulled the plug on that idea like towards the end of the day because the temperatures were dropping. It was just like, oh no. And
also 3 weeks before that, Matt and I drove a Penske truck slammed full of heavy shit through a snowstorm, which was the most terrible. We'll talk about that.
Basically the whole way home.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in the Missouri podcast, but it was the scariest fucking drive ever.
So we decided to pull the plug, but we got the Model A Tudor in your bed.
Yep.
We got, we didn't put actually much in my pickup truck.
We didn't put anything because you had another stop.
We were planning on stopping in Virginia at another stop. So we filled that truck. It wasn't heavy. It was just so full of sheet metal.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of heavy stuff, but it wasn't a lot.
No, we didn't really get it.
There was like some transmissions or some Model A steering boxes.
Yeah,
and stuff.
but nothing really crazy.
Yeah.
No engines or rear ends.
Yeah, so we packed the heck out of it, and we kind of at that point were like, you know what? Actually, I think even at the end when we were leaving, we were like, you know what? We got enough stuff. We'll make some money.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we want to go back for that stuff. And even when we were leaving, we were kind of like, we only got like 40% of the stuff.
They were asking us when we will be coming back, and a lot of times with the family, we just say, we'll touch base with you when we want to come back, kind of leave it open-ended.
Yeah.
So like if we decide it wasn't worth us going back or we do want to go back, we don't really give them a definitive answer, because as we start going through it, it'd be like, we got all shit that's worth nothing.
Yeah, we're not going back for even worse stuff.
Yeah, fill our warehouse with even more stuff that doesn't sell.
Yeah. So we did a little quick side quest. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but we went to Virginia. We visited a nice viewer who had a 40 Ford coupe that was his father's. That was an old like rum runner, hot rod, whatever back in the day. It had a 303 Olds that was hopped up with a Columbia rear and some other stuff. It was a neat car and some extra parts he had laying around. And he invited us over because he was street rodding the car, redoing his dad's old car. And Jason, Steve, and myself went there, but the little caveat was we had to pull the parts off. We had to help him pull the stuff out of the coupe ourselves. He helped us, but we had to go to his shop, so we pulled. After that whole craziness that day, we drove hours, got to him, and we had to pull an Olds engine, a trans,
and a Columbia
rear out of the car. He luckily had it on jack stands and had it mostly apart. But that was a long day, and we didn't leave there, and then we had to drive home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that guy was super cool. His family owned an ice cream stand, so we went and got ice cream afterwards and sent it to Mike. Cause like, look what you're missing out on.
I took that Model A and gave it a grand tour of the United States. I left from West Virginia and drove to Charlotte and went to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. We did a track rental day for my dad's birthday. Mm-hmm. We ran supercars on the road course track. And then I drove from there to my parents' house in Durham, and then from there I drove back up 95. So that Model A probably saw more of the U.S. in the bed of my truck than it's ever seen. And then we all came back, and basically Monday, I think, we just started unloading the truck.
And to be honest, I was not that excited when we got back, because it was like a lot of the sheet metal I couldn't really identify initially, and we weren't. I didn't have a warm. I knew we were going to do fine, but we didn't have like a warm and fuzzy like, man, sometimes we get home, we're like, man, that was so much better. It was crazier.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like.
There was a lot of Pontiac, like a lot of the sheet metal that we got the second time was like 40 to 55 Oldsmobile and Pontiac, and a lot of those cars.
And they were four-door stuff too.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, the sheet metal you're looking at, it's like, I really don't know what it's worth, because NOS GM shit could be $10,000 or $5.
Well, some of it too, we were like, well,
a lot of it wasn't identified.
Well, no, like the Pontiac and old stuff, like a 48 Pontiac four-door sedan.
Yeah.
You could buy a decent one for $10,000.
Less than that.
So what's a fender worth? Like what's an NOS rear quarter worth if you can buy a nice car for that? Like $50, and we got 7 of them. I'm like, ugh.
700 of them. Yeah. And a lot of it wasn't identical. Like I spent we had our good friend Ryan Miller that worked for us for a while. He spent a ton of time. Luke spent a ton of time. Our friend Jeff Yeagle spent a ton of time. We just there's a website that has a bunch of GM parts books downloaded, and you could search by the part number and it searches everything. I spent days on that website. Everyone spent days just trying to figure out what it was. A lot of them were discontinued, and it's like I used the
internet.
Had to
like jump, because he was like the part number was discontinued, and it referred you to a different parts book with a number, and it cross-referenced. It's like you went through all these steps, and then it was like, oh great, it's a Vega part that's worth like $0.
Or he was identifying them, and they were identified incorrectly.
Oh yeah,
he was writing on them what he thought it was, but old man, bad eyes. The GM part numbers are, if they don't have the sticker, they're like stenciled on. If you don't have great eyes, you transpose a number wrong, and it's not a 72 Chevelle, it's a 76 Chevelle. It's like,
Oh,
I
great.
thought that was great, but now it's not so great.
Yeah, so we were going through and Mike started tackling it, but what Mike quickly found, because there was some stuff that we just like we didn't know. So it was all the radiator supports and
Yeah.
slam panels, and Mike's like, I don't really know like what they're worth. Let's I see some of them, and
Yeah.
I started putting them up for sale, like those slam panels and the core supports, and you saw they were like, I don't know, a few $100.
Yeah, like 7 to 1,000, depending on obviously body size, A body, B body, and year. Some of them were bringing $500 to $1,000. I think we only got one that was worth a bunch of money,
But some of them were $200-$300.
yeah.
And I remember you were putting them up, and they were selling like.
And I was pricing a lot of stuff to move it. Obviously, it's big, heavy
Yeah.
shit. I don't need to hang on to it forever. But I started noticing and doing a lot more research. We do this a lot. Like
Yeah.
we have an estate coming up. Matt and I will both spend a lot of time on eBay researching parts just so we're made aware. I never looked at NOS GM stuff before, so I started looking. It's like 4-door and wagon stuff's actually bringing money now because, say a 70 Chevelle, NOS parts for a coupe or a convertible are like the most like 32 3-window parts.
Yep.
So the 4-door and wagon stuff people are starting to buy because you just can't touch a
Yep.
convertible anymore. So before we went to the second trip, we were like, you know what? Before we decided to take a second trip, we were like, we should really just go back and take everything we could possibly fit and figure it out later.
Well, I remember there was stuff we specifically said to Steve, like, what do you think of that? And he's like, oh, that's 4-door Chevelle. That's not worth anything.
Yeah.
That's not worth anything. And then you started looking up. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, one sold for $500, and we left it behind. And it was
Yeah.
like multiple items that you found when researching that we saw and we like consciously didn't take.
And I also started looking back through the footage of panning shots of, on some of them, he wrote very clearly what
Yeah.
they were. And you start looking, you're like, oh, you look that up. You're like, well, that's, we're leaving multiple $100 panels behind because we were unsure.
Yeah, so we started multiplying.
And it was selling fast.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
the
yeah.
word got out. I was putting posts up on Facebook on all that. There's a big NOS group. And then I was putting in all the different body styles, listing, these are the quarter panels we have for sale. These are the trunk lids we have for sale. And it was like, we were just selling stuff so fast. I was like, we should really.
And the key thing is we were pricing them aggressively to sell. So
Yes.
that's why they were selling, because the stuff was out. A lot of it was out there. But when we were like, we had so much of it, it's like, well, we're going to be $200 cheaper than everybody
Yep.
else because we want to sell 3 of them, not
Yeah.
one,
And I sold a bunch of stuff because it was before Carlisle. I put a bunch of posts up on the groups like, hey, we can deliver this to Carlisle. Don't have to ship it. We can transport it between, if you have a friend coming, let's make a deal. Let's get this stuff sold. And after Carlisle, it was a couple weeks from going to the state to after Carlisle. I was like, dude, we sold a bunch of stuff. We really, really, and I'm glad we went back because there was a hood that we found the second time that we left behind. That
Yep.
was big, big money, which we'll talk about then.
Yeah, so we quickly.
And we went back pretty quick. I think it was after.
It was in the summer, right?
No, I think it was in May.
Oh,
I think we went back for like very quickly.
So we must have realized very quickly that we screwed up and should have,
Taken everything.
taken everything. So we planned to get another box truck.
And we took my trailer.
That time we took the truck and trailer. And we figured we would make a big enough dent that time that anything that was left,
Yeah.
it wasn't worth it, because there was a lot of rusty stuff. But we also started realizing at the end of the day, the first trip, she goes, oh, well, I think there's stuff around the back or on the side. And I
Yeah.
walked around in the back, and there was like all these makeshift, like, I guess they were like sheds or something.
I think it was leftover metal from that building, the building. And he just like,
laid stuff over top
Yeah.
of it or whatever. And we found there was like a Model A 2-door body that was taken apart that was like underneath of it, but
Yep.
getting wet. That was kind of like rough. But we found a bunch of stuff back there, and there was like a lot in the weeds, and it was all overgrown. I'm like, there's probably good stuff in here. And then she also mentioned that the house had some stuff in the basement.
yeah.
And we didn't even get to go there. I'm like, you know what? Between what we left behind, the stuff that may be in areas we didn't go to, and usually the stuff in the house is a lot of
Better
times
stuff.
Better stuff. So we made the trip,
And that time it was me, you, Steve, and our friend Kenny.
Yep.
And that was Kenny's first road trip with us. And that, again, we only had one pickup this time. There wasn't two. So it was a lot more running. But we filled I have a 20-foot enclosed trailer, and there was a lot of front fenders. We put front fenders, and the Oldsmobile had like an over fender.
Yeah.
They were like the much smaller rear fenders. But we stuffed my trailer full, like full. And then we filled the box truck with hoods and quarter panels and doors, because we left a ton of doors behind too, because we were just
4-door rear door skins for like 40
and front doors too. We left there was whole NOS full doors that we left too,
but they were like late 40s Pontiac and Olds, and it was the same thing. We were running out of room and energy, and to be fair, this was probably one of the most labor intensive ones we
had to handle it, off the wall into the truck, out of the truck into the box truck, and then out of the box truck into the warehouse. We touched stuff. That was the only downside to this estate. We were moving things a lot.
Yeah, and all the stuff on the walls and things like that, I had to, myself or whoever was doing it, had to like monkey climb up these 2x4 structures he made and get up there and cut with tin snips, because he had nailed a lot of them in that you couldn't just take them off the hook. He had nailed them in, so we had to cut the wire with the tin snips and then hand it way down, 10 feet down to the person down below. That person had to walk it to the pickup truck, and then somebody had to drive the pickup truck load out, and then they would unload with the person who was in the box truck.
And we also someone had to come out with us, because with the way we had the box truck and the trailer parked, for me to back up, I did a lot of fairing. Someone had to watch traffic so I could pull out and back up. It was a mess.
Yeah.
And also, fun fact, the first trip, when we came back that Monday, they started building this upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
We were literally gone, came back on Monday, they started this building. We went to the warehouse, unloaded, and came back, and 90% of the building was built.
That's right. I forgot about that.
It literally just popped in my head that we...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was mind-blowing that just in the time we unloaded the box truck, they had this whole structure basically built.
Yeah.
Or most of the way built. But yeah, on the second trip, we went back and we had a game plan, and that was where our everything sells thing came from, because we were like, we need to grab everything, even if we don't know what it is. And we grabbed 99%.
Yeah, the only thing we left behind that I still question, which it would have been really hard to bring home, was there was a ton of windshields, curved glass windshields.
Yeah.
There was piles of them, but it's one of those things, like the body panels, glass is even harder to identify.
And I don't regret that, because moving them that many times, there's too many chances to get broken, and then shipping it.
Yeah.
And we left that behind. We did leave a handful of hoods behind.
No, we didn't. All the hoods we brought.
I thought there was some big hoods that we left behind.
All the hoods we grabbed the second trip.
Oh, okay.
Because actually we might have got that really good hood the first time.
But he had some carts he built, so the timing. So what we understood from the second trip, she got really comfortable with us and was much more forthcoming. Basically, her husband, her father had bought all this stuff at an auction, and we hear this too often. His dream was, when he retired, to basically start what we're doing. He wanted to start a business with all this inventory, and then for the rest of his life, he would sell it either online or, I think, because when he bought the stuff, the eBay and the internet was kind of starting to take off, and he was hoping, lifelong dream, to just sell vintage parts. And he spent so much time building the building all this racking and rolling carts and inventorying, and he ran out of life. And by the time he got everything kind of inventoried, he didn't have any life left, and he died. He missed the part that he wanted to do of actually trying to sell stuff, and that was what the daughter was emotional about.
It was her father's dream,
and we were, as we're taking it out of there. But we see that all too often, where the organization gets in the way of actually doing the thing, which I'm all for being organized, but if you never get to actually doing the thing, what was the point?
Yeah.
And the sad thing there is that he, for what we paid for everything, he would have gotten a lot more money.
Oh, definitely.
If he would have done it the way we did it.
Yeah.
But he just ran out of life, and she had no information or idea what it was. We didn't even really know.
And the building that full, that's a lot to process to try and even think about trying to sell on your own as a person, not a business.
Yeah. So second time we came back, and it was a lot more easy because we had made a dent.
Yeah.
And then we had paths to go. We had a month or two to like game plan. We knew what we were getting into, so we had.
Did they get the Oldsmobile out of there the second time?
I think it was still there, but did we drag it?
I don't remember.
They might have had it out of there because they might have towed it to
the house in Tennessee.
I can't remember.
I
don't think they towed it. I don't know. I don't think so. Because the second time we came back, they were kind of sort of talking about us buying it.
Oh, that's right.
And she was like, "What would you give me?" And I'm like, "What's a 4-door? It's been sitting." And I remember looking at it a little closer. There was like mouse damage.
It was the paint was popping in a bunch of spots. But we did that time. We took all the wood was just going to get tossed
because we had built this building.
Yes.
And I was like, I need 2x4s to build like stuff. And we like as we were doing all of it, this was when lumber was really expensive.
Yeah.
We started looking around. We're like, there's like all these like 18-foot 2x4s or whatever they were.
Your enclosed trailer was filled with that wood for a long. Do you remember that? We just stuffed the white trailer full of wood for months.
So we asked the gal. I was like, what are you going to do with the building? She had these dreams of turning it into like an Airbnb or something like that. Like, so all these rolling racks and this, shelves he had built out of 2x4s. She's like, I don't know. We'll probably gut the building. I'm like, do you mind if I take some of them? So when we were taking some of the panels down, it made it easier because we were just cutting the whole cross beam. And sure, I wasn't getting I was still getting like 10-foot 2x4s.
Yep.
And they had tons of nails in them. But I'm like, you know what? For building.
There's some of that in the way. If you ever come to the warehouse and look on the pallet racking where the mezzanine is, you'll see 2x4s with a fuck ton of nails sticking out of them.
From West Virginia.
We never took the nails out. We just put them in.
Repurposed.
Yes.
So
I think we just doing that was the last bit of wood from West Virginia. Finally.
Yeah.
Like 4 years later.
Was so much of it, and we were using it. I mean, there was a bunch of it I used in here for different things and all over the place, but it was super handy. And we got a ton of sheet metal. I remember I went outside and I dug in the weeds and I found a bunch of early Ford stuff that was out there, and I found a ton of hubcaps.
Yeah, a bunch of good hubcaps.
Good hubcaps that were out in the weeds, covered up. I can't even remember. We found a lot of stuff outside when we started digging.
Found a lot of stuff on the floors too. Once you took the sheet metal off the beams, in between all the beams, there was just piles of stuff. And I
remember that back corner. The one back left corner.
It was like chest high, just everything.
But there was stuff like he had bought out an old like parts store.
Yeah.
And there was like NOS, just like
seatbelts.
Yeah, doodads and stuff from a parts store, and it was like, that's kind of cool, universal, hot rod, whatever stuff. So we got a lot of...
The second trip, we were there. We were in the building till like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I remember. She went... There was no lights in the building, right?
No, we brought our studio lights with. Yeah, there was no electric. Yeah.
And she said, we're hungry. We're going to go... We got to go to dinner. So she's like... She knew us well enough at that point that they could trust us. She's like, just lock up when you guys are done. And we're like, all right.
Yeah.
So we stayed till like... It was... pitch black and scary as shit because it was like middle of nowhere, and driving down that lane, it was like something out of a horror movie. But we literally, because we knew this was definitely the last time, so we tried to hit every corner and crevice to make sure there was no really good stuff. We still left behind
the truck transmissions. Do you remember all the big truck transmissions? There was probably 50 of them in the back corner that were just piled up that we left behind.
We easily left behind another 26-foot truckload,
and it was a lot of the stuff we left behind was big, heavy
scrap metal. So you easily could have got a metal dumpster there.
Oh, 100%.
And there was probably, as much as I paid them for all the stuff, if they actually spent the time, because we didn't grab radiators and stuff either.
No, so there was a bunch of stuff outside.
Yeah.
Just along the one side of the building, there was junk cars.
Oh, remember there was that little like outhouse thing that was on the side, and there was wheels stacked up, and I went out there and was finding parts in the outhouse.
Yeah, there's just stuff everywhere.
And then they took us to the house. Oh, during that day, they took us to the house.
Yeah, Because we went and got lunch or something.
Oh, she took us to lunch. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we went there, and the house was super not in great shape. Apparently, it floods there. So
They did tell us about the house when we were
she
there
sent me
the
a
first
photo,
time.
and the water was like waist high in the basement.
Yeah.
She said, "Yeah, all the parts are in the basement where that photo is waist high with water." We're like, "Great, what's left in there?" But we were
Yeah.
like, "You know what? We got to go and see." And I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
And we went. The only bummer was there was some like I think they were number 10 Olds heads that were underwater for a very long time. They're good 324 or 371 or 324.
And even if they weren't underwater, the basement was just so damp for years. Everything was just rusty.
Yeah, so we
Found some 33-4 parts.
garnish molding. I remember we found a set of 5-window garnish
Yeah.
molding there. But there was a bunch of stuff, but we had to crawl through the window or something. We had to I had to hand the parts
Out the window.
out the window because the steps were all sketchy.
Yeah.
And we were handing parts out this broken window in the basement. And I was just like throwing stuff out the window, and then we just got out of there pretty quick. But a lot of it was so rough that it was like,
Yeah, it was, and the house was really. They wouldn't let us in the house. Remember, the husband went in the house and unlocked the basement
we went
door.
through like the little corner to get in and out,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't literally let us in the house. And we talked about this before. We want to go in the house because I like vintage clothing, and I've bought and sold it over the years, and household stuff I know pretty well. And I'm like, man, we'd love to see, but I understand that it was so rough they didn't want us in there. But we grabbed all that stuff out of there and made our way home. But it was like, so what were some of the highlights from you selling this stuff?
So there was a few surprises. So we'll first say we did not sell all of it.
No.
Individually. We had an auction in 2023, I think it was, the spring of 23. We had an auction and we still sold a shit ton of it. I mean,
100.
there was there was like 300 pieces of sheet metal because there was just piles of
Yeah, we were selling lots of pallet loads
of door skins and just unknown. It got to the point where I just had piles at the old warehouse of just stuff I couldn't identify. And it passed through so many hands of friends coming to help identify and stuff, me asking on the internet.
Remember, we made an agreement.
It was a year. We spent a year.
When we made the deal on all that stuff, because I didn't really want to buy all that stuff, but I wanted to do the stuff for the video, and I knew that we'd make some money. So we made an agreement.
Yep.
That was like, we're going to give it a year, and we'll sell whatever we could sell. And at the end, if we can't identify it or we're just tired of it, we're going to have an auction and blow it all out and let the GM resellers buy it, even if we're leaving money on the table. At that point, we probably have made our money back. So we were well into the profit at that point.
Yeah. And we sold, I mean, a lot of this stuff actually our friend Steve bought. Steve from Iron Man.
Oh, yeah. He's another reseller, but he's better at buying than he is at selling.
Yeah. A lot of it went to him. But there was some 59, I believe they were 5960 Impala door skins. Those were really good. We had a couple pairs of them.
Was there a quarter panel, a 59?
There was a 59 quarter panel, but it was cut.
Okay.
It was just the bottom. I think the front and rear of the wheel well was cut off, but it was the big fin section.
Yeah.
That was decent, but like GM guys, like we would buy that to use because it's got the important bead on it.
Yeah.
A lot of those dudes want to do just an entire quarter panel, not patch in a section. So that was actually all the way. That wasn't hanging. Do you remember? That was on top. You had to like Spider-Man.
Yeah, I remember because I grabbed that because I could identify it was a 59.
Yeah.
You know.
So there was that. The really big thing was, I can't remember what year. I think it's 69. I think 69 or 70, I think. I'll have to put it at the bottom.
Was it that late? I thought it was earlier.
No, it's like, it was an SS Impala. 390. So they didn't call it an Impala. It was just an SS 396 Impala chassis. They only made.
It's big block.
Yeah. I think they only made 700 of them total. 1 year only car. No, sorry. 1 year only body style. They made it for multiple years, but it was a 1 year only body style. We had an NOS hood.
Yeah.
Which is like the rarest part on the entire car,
like,
apparently.
It's a holy grail part. It's probably the equivalent of, and even there's way more of them. But like on early Fords, like a 25 louver hood for a 32.
Yeah.
They're coveted.
It's
Guys
worth more, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Which couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So it was like Mike comes back to the shop after being at the warehouse, and he goes, I found this hood. It's really rare. What do you think I charge? He does this a lot with me. He'll be like, if he doesn't know what it is and it's kind of rare, he like kind of asks me for the okay to like put a number on it, whether it's high or low.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. It might be worth $2,000. It might be worth, I don't know. And I go, what did I say?
5.
I was like, just put $5,000 on it. Who knows what it is? And Mike like listed it, I don't know, on the drive home or that night.
No, I listed it while I was at the shop.
Yeah.
Because so what originally happened was I posted it there was like 10 hoods I couldn't identify. I posted one at a time in this NOS GM group, said, hey, this is the deal. I just need help identifying it. And I know when when you put something up good that you can't identify, you get a shit ton of messages just asking how much. And I know better. I just go, well, what is it? Tell me what it is, then we can go from there. They told me what it was, and I had a gentleman that helped me inform me of the price. He said, I told him what I thought it was worth, $2,500. He's like, double it. And I went to Matt, and I was like, what do you think? He goes, fuck it, double it.
Yeah.
So I told a dude $5,000, and he drove overnight from Buffalo. He was at the warehouse the next morning and bought it. And it turns out he's got 5 of those cars, and like
major collector.
He's bought every NOS hood. When I told a bunch of people who I sold it to, he's like, that dude's bought every NOS hood that's been for sale for the last 15 years. He's got like 10 of them. And
he probably would have paid a bit more than that.
Yeah.
But we were happy to get that kind of score.
It was
there wasn't a lot of those.
There was a lot of like $500 items, $700 items, but I think that was the only thing that we sold that was like, holy shit.
Yeah, and we had Mike had to do a lot of Mike and friends that helped us and people that we paid to help us.
You did a bunch too. You came to the warehouse and were identifying.
Yeah, it was just there was a very labor intensive and time intensive. People don't realize that this is one of these estates where people will talk negatively about us. That they got this big load and they made all this money. And yes, you know what? We made a shit ton of money off that estate. I'm not gonna lie, we made a fuck ton of money, but we put in, if you counted the hours, and I paid multiple people to help and us and our own time. And we, if you broke it down by the hour, we probably didn't make what you would think we'd make.
There's very few people or businesses out there that could have moved. Thankfully, we had the warehouse at the time.
We talk about this all the time. We're one of the only
crazy
groups or people in the country that will come and buy like that and do it in an effective manner and not bullshit you and would get it done.
Yeah.
There's people that will do it, or there's guys that have the money, but it's just a guy with money and he's got to get people together. And this was one of those, when it's a mixed bag. Now, if they were only selling 70 Chevelle parts, NOS, sure, there would have been 100 guys that would have came and moved 300 body panels. But because it was there was a lot of gambling involved where you're not sure what you're getting. Most guys won't do that. They would have offered, I'd take it for scrap price, So we put a lot of work into that, and it was a year of a lot of moving and selling and things involved.
Yep.
And then we just finally, we hit up our friends at Cabin Fever Auction Company and said, hey, we want to do an auction. They allowed us to do an online auction, and we just had to put the lots out and photograph them.
Yep.
We sent them the photographs. They then put it in an online auction, and we kind of handled everything. They just basically gave the platform and their license to auction they used. And we sold it all
pretty cheap.
I mean, people saw us at Carlisle then after that auction or shows, were like, man, I'm sorry you took such a beating on that. I'm like, I'm happy. I made a shit ton of money. That was the filth.
Yeah, that shit's all gone.
And if you guys didn't buy that stuff, it was going to the scrapyard because we were out of space. So we did end up scrapping some stuff that was left over that people bought, paid for, and never picked up.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff that got left behind that just went to the scrapyard just because bought and paid for it, and you have a month to pick it up, and
it went for $2.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a pallet load of parts, and it went for $2 at auction, and you didn't pick it up.
Yeah,
it's worthless at this
exactly.
point. So we scrapped it, but that was probably the craziest one as far as volume and getting to it and getting it out and everything involved. It was volume wise, it was substantial.
And I will say, if you made it this far this year, I think we're going to top that one. We have some stuff in the works. That's all I'm going to say. there.
It's going to be close. It's going to be close in quantity, but this time I think it's
this is mostly Ford related.
mostly early Ford.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be bamboo, but it's pretty interesting one.
I cannot absolutely wait.
Yeah, so we have some pretty interesting ones coming up, but this one, West Virginia, I think it'll be hard to top this one.
Just because of the sheer volume of will never beat the volume of NOS panels ever.
Yeah, most of these collections have been broken up at this
So
point.
from what I understand, the majority of his panels, talking to our friend Jeff Eagle, there was an auction late 90s, early 2000s in Ohio, I believe, and the gentleman that died had a gigantic warehouse filled with. He went to all the dealerships all over the country, bought all the NOS panels, and had them organized. The auction was so big. There was a 5-day auction.
Yep.
It was Chevrolet one day, Oldsmobile the next day, Pontiac the next day, Buick the next day, and then Friday was just it was all GM stuff. And then Friday was just unknown. No, it was all GM.
Oh.
And then the last day was just unknown. And I think that's what this guy bought was 4-door wagon and stuff that they didn't, because that SS 427 hood was not marked in any way. No part numbers, no markings on it. So unless there was someone there that knew it, it probably went for cheap because no one knew what it was.
Yeah, we think that this guy was buying all the stuff that nobody wants, and it goes to show sometimes sitting on stuff is good.
Yeah, the 4-door stuff came back around.
And we think he was buying all that stuff. And the son-in-law who was there with us said he helped him move a lot of that stuff, and it was like multiple trips.
Yeah.
And he helped him move the stuff in the building, and and he was just talking about the sheer volume of him buying all that stuff and how much time it took to move it all, and it was just crazy.
It would have been cool to see that auction. Imagine a 5-day auction.
If it was, I'm bummed out. I thought there was Ford stuff there.
I'm pretty sure Jeff said he went on like the Oldsmobile.
I could have. We'll have to ask him again. I thought there was like every make because I thought I heard about that guy before.
Maybe there was.
And the guy, the way I understand, and maybe some people that are listening or watching knew of this estate, but from what I understand, the guy had a giant warehouse building. He set it up so he could drive through, and he could go and pick the stuff off.
He would drive through before Hershey or Carlisle and just
pick the stuff up. But I thought he had everything.
Maybe he did. I'll have to ask Jeff. Because Jeff said he went out, pretty sure he went out on the Oldsmobile day to buy stuff for some Woody stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the guy had Ford and Mercury stuff too, but I could be wrong. But either way, that sounds like an epic auction. Most of those types of collections have been broken up.
Yeah, there's
especially not GM. NOS body panels. Now, there's still collections out there that, like some of the ones we're doing with, it's a lot of everything. But, like, the ones it's just like, that's only quality. Like, I just couldn't imagine. That's exhausting.
It's so crazy. And the guys that were smart enough to go to the dealerships when the downsizing happened, like the late 80s, early 90s, when the dealerships were downsizing their inventory, all those dudes were much older, and they're all gone now. There's none of them that were really alive anymore.
So we're hitting some of those estates now, that stuff that's left over, but a lot of the ones that we're getting into that are guys that were like that, much like the one we're doing locally, the family's been selling off for years, or there was an initial auction, and we usually end up getting in with the, like, not the filth, but like the last 10% of what's left, and the really good stuff either the family sold or they had an auction, or the guy was selling his whole life. And what we're getting is the stuff that, at that time wasn't valuable, and now it is, So that was a case of the stuff sat long enough and marinated that it was finally worth something.
Yeah.
So the shit turned to gold.
Yeah, that was so crazy.
So
I'm glad we document this kind of stuff, because it's just, when you tell someone about that, they're just like, there's no way. And then you show them photos and they're like, dude, that is crazy.
Yeah, so that one was wild. That was probably one of the most labor intensive ones for everyone involved, and like full day,
I think
nonstop.
That's the only estate we've ever done multiple trips from. That large, we like local estates are different because it's right down the road. But like,
yeah, you're right.
We've never gone to an estate multiple times far away.
And if that one was further away, we probably wouldn't have flown back.
No. Because it just the price for a box truck to move it all, and
Although maybe we would have if we would have found out. I think I would have still flown there.
Probably.
With knowing what we found and what we got out of there, might have felt differently.
I do still giggle when you walk around Carlisle. There's a lot of people that bought stuff at auction. You could see my handwriting that are NOS panels that I wrote on in paint marker, and I walk by booths and I'm like, I know where all that came from.
Yeah, I handled those parts. I found them.
I've probably worn the primer off of that panel. How many times I've touched it?
And we're like, thank you.
Yes, I'm glad I can just look at it and reminisce. I don't have to ever see it again.
Yep. So, but anyways, that was our West Virginia one. Tons of fun reminiscing. If you guys haven't watched that video, it's a fun one to watch those 2 videos. The visual aspect of the first video is when we first got there and the bamboo and all the stuff. Insane. Definitely go rewatch those if you have a few minutes. It's pretty fun. That's definitely one of our top 3, I would say.
And I'll put them in chronological order too, so you can watch the first video and then watch the unloading to see the crazy stuff we got, and then the second time we went and the unloading again.
Yeah, so it was.
I enjoy also editing these because I basically go back and watch the video.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to go back and just physically watch all the craziness that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun, but. That's all I have for this one. Thank you guys for listening and watching, and make sure you check next week. We will have an audio-only podcast.
Also, we missed last Sunday because I lost the SD card. We found it. It is up. If you're looking for the one from last week, those will be posted back to back pretty quickly, but it's up on YouTube and all the
audio only. You can find it on your Spotify, any of those, but you can also find it on YouTube as well if you watch that way or listen. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Catch you next time. See ya.